nearly 24 years, this laughing scene from Final Fantasy X has lived in infamy and sparked numerous online debates. Is it cringy? Is it endearing? Is it bad acting? Is it bad voice direction? Is it exactly how it was intended, but we just don't understand the cultural context? I've seen it all, and I've been a part of many of these discussions. But there's a certain piece of context I recently came into that has changed the way that I view this scene. Several months ago, I was sent this video by one of our viewers, sent it to me in a message on Twitter. And immediately, the uncanny similarity between this laughing festival in Japan and the infamous laughing scene in Final Fantasy X was completely obvious, to the point where my jaw dropped a little bit while watching it.
Me too.
I started thinking immediately, this is so similar that something like this must have inspired Final Fantasy X. I couldn't imagine it being the other way around.
Certainly not.
Certainly not. Shinto priest or whatever they're called would have played Final Fantasy X and then created a festival, kind of inspired by that. So I thought maybe this is a festival or a ritual that they do in Shintoism that possibly could have inspired that scene in Final Fantasy X. I didn't have time to go look into it, and months went by, and then I remembered it, and I was like, oh yeah, we've done a whole podcast on this series, and this is something that could be super relevant for that commentary. So you got on to researching it.
I did.
And
well, the
what
answer
did you find?
Is yes and also no. As for this specific laughing festival, its origins, well, this shrine has been around for a very long time. But that specific festival you're referring to was started sometime around 2008 by the leader of the head priest of the shrine there. And this shrine, it's a shrine in Osaka, and it's a really cool place. I haven't been to this shrine in particular. It's situated in between Osaka and Nara, and there's like a mountain range that divides the two, and this is on the Osaka side of that mountain range. And this is called the O-Warai Shinji. So warai means to laugh, but it also just kind of means to smile. And of course, in Final Fantasy X, those two are very much connected, at least in that scene where Yuna isn't just telling him, hey, start laughing. She says, smile, try a fake smile first. Okay, now try a fake laugh. But often the word for laugh and smile is kind of the same word in Japanese. It's a whole ritual that actually goes way back in time. This goes all the way back to the ancient Shinto days, back with the god Amaterasu, who is the sun god of Japan. So while the specific ritual you're referencing is less than 20 years old, it is based on a deeper Shinto mythology that goes back really far. So, at one point, Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun and also happiness and joy, she gets really pissed off at her brother and decides to go into hiding. She's like, I am withdrawing the light of the sun from the world, and I'm going to hide behind this boulder that is impenetrable, right? And there's maybe two different versions of the story, but in both versions, the gods, who are now shrouded in darkness, approach this boulder, and they pretend to be having a good time. And Amaterasu is confused. She's like, they're not supposed to be enjoying this. I am punishing them. What is happening? And so one story, the laughter itself breaks the boulder, and then the sun comes back up. In another story, Amaterasu is like so intrigued by the dance and by the frivolity and the happiness that people are displaying, she kind of creaks open the gate a little bit. She's kind of, looking around, and then that is then how the sunlight enters back into the world. But in both versions of the story, the people pretend to have a party and to be happy in order for the sunlight to come up and then shine back down on them.
Summoners and their guardians are kind of like Spira's ray of light.
So that's an old story. This is thousands of years old. However, this ritual is a lot more new. But this isn't the only laughing ritual in Japan. There are others, but they aren't quite as on the nose, or not quite as perfectly Tidus as this one was. There's one in Wakayama. An officiator of the ritual, of the ceremony, he dons like makeup and basically dresses up like a clown. And then he shows up and he's got this whole thing that he does with this like I don't even know what you call it, but he's shaking bells and making noise and making everybody laugh, right? That one's a little different because in Osaka, that laughing ritual is specifically let's laugh, and it's thousands of people show up to this thing. And it's for 20 minutes straight and with the express purpose of we're going to laugh so that we laugh away all of our cares. We're going to laugh away the troubles of the last year. This is done at the end of the year. So it's an end of year ritual. And you are to laugh away the troubles of the past year under the idea of, and in Japan, it is called Owari yokereba subete yoshi, which means all is well that ends well. And as long as you finish the year well, it kind of recolors the whole year back for you as it was a good year if it ended well, right? I can think of stories and maybe sports events, or there's a lot of ways in which that's actually true. If it ended well, then the whole thing was a good football game if it had a good ending. That actually draws on an even older custom in Japan. Bounenkai is like the end of year party, and that's where this festival comes from, really. The Bounenkai is something you'll do with friends or family. You can do it. I guess this festival, it's basically, that's what this is. It's also often done in business. And one of the reasons why this is done in a business is to foster unity within the company. So often at a Bounenkai, if they're doing this, according to tradition, the leadership of the company will pour drinks for the lower level employees, for basically everybody. They say anything you do or say that day is forgotten the next day. I don't know how seriously you should take that when you're talking to your boss. But the idea is you can be yourself. You can let go. Japan has such a strict culture sometimes, especially with work and with the way that the country typically operates. It doesn't provide a ton of lateral freedom for you to kind of just go out and explore things on an individual level. It's a very collective, community-based society. But they do have these festivals that kind of help make up for that, where people can just let go and just laugh or shout. Not super common in Japan, but very common on specific occasions, right? And they'll often drink a lot of alcohol to make sure that they're all softened up so that they can just let go as much as they can. And of course, this happens more or less towards the end of the year. So it's super ingrained in the culture. But because of this, now we're going to jump back to Final Fantasy X. Because in Japan, the work and school and just the formal life of Japan is very difficult. It's very taxing for a lot of people. These moments where you kind of have to force letting go, it doesn't come naturally to just laugh out loud. If you go to Japan, you will not often hear people just opening their mouth wide and laughing out loud the way that you will in America. You will hear it 10 times more often here than you would
You're
there.
telling me that at movie theaters of Minecraft showings, they don't have people throwing popcorn and live chickens all over the theater? They don't do that there?
In Japan, I would be shocked to see anything like that in Japan. Absolutely. Things like that, my gosh, just their society is so cohesive and unified that, yeah, I mean, the youth still act out, but I don't think they quite do things like that.
I learned to practice smiling when I'm feeling sad,
Because of this, there are sanctioned times where you are told, basically, today's the day where you just let go and laugh and just break all the rules, right? Just for this one day. It's like a festival kind of idea. But Final Fantasy X doesn't really have that, and Tidus doesn't really understand the culture that he's in, right? But he still has been bottling up his emotions this whole time. And I want to be very careful when I say this. I believe that this ritual came across better in Japan than in the English. And I say that with full knowledge of what Alexander O. Smith told me yesterday, because I talked to him about this. And he said that the scene is awkward in Japanese as well.
Just for people who don't know, Alexander O. Smith was a translator on Final Fantasy X. He translated the Japanese into English for the North American, or I guess just for the English regions.
Yeah. And Alexander O. Smith actually asked about this specific scene in particular when he talked to Nojima and Katase, and he said, how's this supposed to go? Like, what exactly were you going for here? And I believe it was Kazushige Nojima who said that he took an acting class years ago, and that in the acting class, the acting teacher had told them as an exercise to just fake laugh for a little while. And probably, I don't know, I've been in acting classes like this. Sometimes people will pair off, or it'll be everyone together just with the teacher, and he'll just go one at a time. Okay, show me a laugh. Laugh right now, right? And in America, like in an acting class, this is pretty common.
Yeah, I took a college theater class, and there's all kinds of exercises they do for the purpose of loosening you up. Vocalizations that are just crazy, body movements that are very awkward and weird. The whole point of it is to get you out of the headspace of being embarrassed.
Yes, exactly.
And to just freely express.
Yeah.
And I believe in Final Fantasy X, that is exactly what Yuna is trying to get Tidus to do. The funny part, and the reason why I agree with Alex that this is also meant to register awkwardly in Japanese too, is that he goes so far.
He kind of does.
That even she who suggested the exercise in the first place is like, you probably shouldn't emote that loudly and that big.
Right.
But at that point, it did loosen him up. So he
there's a natural
doubles
laugh.
down and goes even further. And then that kind of breaks her guard that she was beginning to put up.
Right.
And she lets loose with him,
Right.
which is why the scene is endearing, even though it is awkward on its face.
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
But that festival that we just showed earlier in this episode, that would never happen in America. That festival cannot exist here unless Japan is here, right? It can't exist here because we don't have the same societal structure that they do, right? And so while in acting classes in America, they'll go one at a time, laugh. Okay, you cry, you shout and be angry, you laugh and be happy, right? And it's like, it's an exercise for an actor. And that's what Nojima was saying. This is what kind of inspired the whole thing. However, there's also other deeper practices in Japan that make this maybe less of just this is what actors do, and more this is something that maybe the whole culture can do at certain times, right? We don't typically look at Japanese culture and society and see people acting out of order and doing things like crying in public. That is very uncommon in Japan. Yet, when we play Japanese video games, you watch Japanese movies, you watch anime, you read manga, these emotional outbursts are actually very common, right? That there is some like suppression of that happening in Japan, more so than in places in the West. But they have these outlets that we don't quite have. So Yuna going up and telling Tidus, hey, pretend to be happy, and also now, even though you don't feel like it, go ahead and laugh and let loose. That is something that would land differently in Japan versus here. But the reason I want to be careful about this is because Alexander O. Smith giving that information from Nojima, saying that, no, this is supposed to be awkward. This is supposed to feel awkward, even in Japan. And it's true. That festival that we just showed, the Hiraoka Shrine, the Hiraoka Jinja in Osaka, that festival, when those people start laughing, it is awkward. This isn't natural for them. But the festival goes on, that part of it, the festival is hours long, but that laughing part of it is 20 minutes long. And after a few minutes, you see the people kind of start to loosen up and to start to embrace it and to start to just let loose, right? But it is still awkward. And I think Japan is a place where that type of ritual can happen and isn't as awkward as in America. So Japan seems to have that type of bedrock in it to where a ritual like that can just pop up out of the ground in the last 20 years and thousands of people attend it and just fake laugh for 20 minutes, right? That just can't happen here. And so that means that there's already a bedrock social structure within Japan that allows for this kind of thing to make sense for them and to be something that maybe they identify with more, even though it's still awkward, but that they can identify with the desire to just let loose and laugh for a little bit at the end of the year, especially a very troubling year, right? Things are difficult, but we're going to come here together and we're all going to laugh it off, right? That is, I think, a more unique Japanese kind of cultural artifact that I do believe did influence this scene in Final Fantasy X.
20分間なんか笑うの初めしんどいなって思ってたんですけど、なんか後半からなんかほんまに面白くなっちゃってなんか笑ってました。
The scene is very endearing, but I also would argue that this scene might actually be one of the top 5 most important scenes in Final Fantasy X at all.
No, I'd agree with that.
Just completely.
Yeah.
This is so important, and let me explain why real quick. The most powerful summon in the game is this moment right here. And let me put a different word on it here. I told you the whole story about Amaterasu, right? Let me, instead of saying that the people laughing outside of the boulder where Amaterasu kind of imprisoned herself in darkness, I'm going to use the word summon, right? That the people who laughed surrounding the boulder in darkness and sadness and depression and despair, that when they exercised this laugh, this false laugh, that it actually had the power of bringing out the true laugh, the natural laugh, and the light and happiness and joy, right? That in the act of pretending to be happy, that somehow you actually do find happiness finds its way to you, right? And the most powerful summon in Final Fantasy X is the one that stretches outside of the game itself and into the real world. The fake laugh is a summoning of natural joy that works to enter into your being and to then give you this feeling that was absent before and that you didn't know how to get, right? So Amaterasu was gone. We summoned the light back up, you know? We summoned the happiness and joy back into our lives that we felt was absent beforehand. And it works. It works.
It was your idea.
Thank you.
Huh?
I want my journey to be full of laughter.
So if somebody listens to this conversation and suddenly starts practicing forced laughter to lighten their mood, will we have done our jobs?
Yes. I that's not even something I have to chew on. I think that absolutely. That is the point of the scene. And it is the point of exercises like the festival that was sent to me that made me make this connection in the first place. And it is something that is clearly deeply rooted in Japanese culture.
Yeah.
So whether or not Kazushige Nojima was directly inspired by a festival of this kind or some theater class, there is something like that kind of spread through the cultural zeitgeist of just Asia, I think, in its totality, not even just regionally in Japan.
I think that's probably true, yeah.
And so we talk about Carl Jung and the collective unconscious all the time. This would be something I would apply for the cultural collective unconscious of Asia. That this idea of open up, let it out, let it go, fake it until you get that tightness out of you is something that is culturally understood there a lot better than perhaps it is in other regions of the world.
Right. Here in the West, it's like the only way to get people here to laugh together for 20 minutes is to do something genuinely funny for 20 minutes because we just don't have the same constraints on our society that they do. Watch Tropic Thunder. I don't know. Watch a funny stand-up comedian. That's how we laugh for 20 minutes, right? But it's all individual. It's all, we just do it on TV at home or something like that. It's less unifying. It's less, community-oriented. But can you watch those videos of those people laughing and not laugh yourself? I found myself smiling and laughing just watching.
Well, yeah, not only that, even the videos, I don't know if you've seen these, where they have people who have awkward laughs and they put them on a panel together.
I have seen those.
And they all start doing their really weird laughs and all the people in the audience are laughing. And it's just like, it escalates.
Laughing inspires laughter, and laughter is just the sound of joy.
It
works.
I guess.